Hello, everyone. Rob Guest from football.london here, and welcome to the latest episode of Gold and Guest Talk Tottenham, sponsored by NordVPN. Joining me as ever, it's Alistair Gold. I don't think I need to ask how you are today, do I?
Not really. No, definitely not got Derby high that you had from your Derby last week. Yeah, it's just well, there's so much to talk about this game. It was one of the weirdest North London derbies I've watched. The scoreline kind of the derby didn't deserve a scoreline of 3-2. It wasn't that kind of game, and we'll kind of discuss the reasons why. The really disappointing bits, a couple of positives, but look, it's a North London derby defeat. There's very little kind of excitement to take from a game like that if you're on the losing end of it. But yeah, there's loads we can discuss, and we can see what needs to be fixed. And I asked Ange a couple of questions after the game, which brought some interesting responses as well that I think require further diving into. But yeah, it's a North London derby defeat. Never a great thing to talk about, but we'll kind of properly dive into it, dissect it, and we'll come out the other end hopefully understanding it all a little bit more.
Yeah, so 3-2 defeat, Spurs just giving themselves an absolute mountain to climb in the second half, with Arsenal 3 goals to the good. Pierre-Emile Højbjerg's own goal up and the scoring, Bukayo Saka and then Kai Havertz made it 3. Spurs responding through Christian Romero and Son's penalty, but it was too little, too late, and it really was self-inflicted. Those 3 goals, really, really poor ones to concede.
Oh, honestly, it was. I was sat next to Kaya, who's our Arsenal reporter, and he just turned to me at one point and went, "I have no idea how Arsenal are 3-0 up in this game. I have no idea." He said they haven't really done anything. Spurs have been the better team out there. And I mean, the stats were like daft. I think Arsenal had 28% possession in the first half. That's all they had. They barely got out of their box. Even Arteta said afterwards that Spurs just forced them back. They really struggled with Spurs' high press and doing anything to get out. And it was just like the first opportunity they kind of really had of a set piece. And Højbjerg, I mean, it's difficult. It's still a set piece goal. There is an unfortunate aspect to it. He's trying to get to the first ball. It could have been stronger. And if you're going to kind of, when he analyzes it, I'm sure he'll kind of wonder about why he was trying to thrust himself in that direction. You've probably got more of a chance of diverting it that way. But then, yeah, after that, to have 3 goals in that first half when, you don't want to give one of the best teams in the country right now any opportunity, let alone 3. And it just was such a shame because I felt like Spurs approached it really well, the game. I felt the crowd were up for it. I felt the whole atmosphere, the performance was really kind of positive, the way it started. And it just like they managed to take the kind of wind out of their own sails. Second half, I actually kind of felt they played better in the first half than they did in the second half, which is weird. And they ended up kind of, I'm loath to say won the second half 2-0 because obviously it doesn't work like that. But, got the 2 goals in the second half. Yeah, such a strange one. And I think there's only one place to really start, and that's with set pieces, isn't it?
Yeah, same old story. I mean, last week we were talking about will Ange and Mile Jedinak that work on the set pieces ahead of the North London derby, given how good Arsenal are at them. And having watched the game, you'd say no, they haven't been working on them. And again, just such poor ones to concede. I mean, the first one's bad, but the third one's horrendous. It's just so easy for Kai Havertz. And again, it's Ben White just being in front of Vicario, isn't it? Just leaning into him. But the thing is, Tottenham don't have anyone there for a bit of protection on the goalkeeper, what makes it all the worse, because we've seen it so many times. I mean, you thought Jack Harrison's goal in the Everton game should have been
I love the
disallowed.
way you thought. You thought. I knew it had to be the Everton one.
And then there was West Ham, the London Stadium. They didn't score from it, but Antonio was, leaning into Vicario. So a number of teams,
Man City FA Cup, yeah.
A number of teams are doing this, and it's something Spurs should be picking up on because he's costing them.
Yeah. You made a great point right at the top there. 2 weeks to prepare. And this is what kind of annoyed me the most about it, is that you've had 2 weeks to prepare against a team that are the best at set pieces, this season. They've got, I think it's something like 20 in all goals. It's something like that from set pieces. And they've got, I mean, we saw it yesterday. It was really weird, actually. They've got Nicholas Jova, the set piece coach at Arsenal, who they nicked from Man City, who nicked previously from Brentford. And he does attacking set pieces and defensive set pieces, bit of an all-rounder. And you could see him way out of the technical area, almost like on the touchline between the two benches, like shouting various things at the Arsenal players and where he wanted them to be and everything, or shouting at David Raya at points as well and what he needed to be doing. And you just kind of looked across and you just saw nothing coming from the Spurs bench, kind of thing. I mean, we see, and that's maybe another part of it that I hadn't even thought of this before this exact second. Mile Jedinak, we see up in the stands with the analysts. If he's the guy that's sorting out defensive set pieces, I guess why is he not shouting for the touchline? Kind of, why is he not organising down there? I hadn't even crossed my mind until I just was thinking about Jova and what he was doing. I know there's argument. I think he said it before. There's not enough space, but if he's doing such a key role for the team, maybe he should be down there constantly saying, "Look, this is one of this. This is the one we've practiced this time. You need to be doing that, like that, whatever." And it's just, they had 2 weeks to prepare for it. It was the same with the Everton game. They knew Everton, who had the second highest scorers from set pieces in the Premier League, didn't properly prepare for it and conceded 2 set piece goals. Look, there's other aspects if people kind of want to have gripes about it. I thought Ben White was an absolute pest in there. I mean, he was doing some kind of stuff that the officials maybe could have spotted. I know some people have pointed out the weird moment before. I think it's is it the Havertz one? No, it might be. No, I think it was the Højbjerg one, actually. I think first is the Højbjerg one. He's mucking around with Vicario's gloves. He's like patting and swatting his gloves. And then it looks like, I don't know whether he actually managed it or not, but it looked like he was trying to undo his gloves at the Velcro. It's difficult to tell because Vicario's got his shirt sleeve over the glove, but he's doing something. You kind of think, "Oh, what are you doing?" I mean, that's just weird. You talk about the dark arts, but that's like a bit odd. And then for the Havertz goal, he very deliberately kind of goes in front of Vicario quite late before the corner's coming and then just rams himself back into him. It's not a kind of, I'm going to stand in front of you. He actually rams himself back into Vicario, knocks Vicario backwards, so he's almost over the line. So by the time that the corner comes in, and look, there's way more aspects about it, and Havertz being completely free, all of that. But Vicario then is trying to react while pretty much on or just behind his goal line. So there is an element of Ben White affecting that period of that moment of play while purely focusing on kind of whacking into Vicario rather than trying to aim for a ball or anything. So I think, I think you could look at that and say that's not right, but that doesn't excuse the set piece defending because, we know they do the zonal marking and it's so hit and miss. That's the problem with it. I don't think they're strong enough from the first balls. I think it was Højbjerg and Porro. Obviously Højbjerg for the first. I think it was Porro for the second one. People just not picking up anyone, react to it. That's the problem with zonal stuff, is you are having to react to what someone does. Whereas with man marking, I guess you're alongside them the whole way. And it's just not good enough. It isn't. I asked Ange about it after the game, and it's an interesting one. Every time there's a set piece goal, everyone there's a barrage of tweets to the journalists like, man up, have some courage, ask about set pieces. And it's like, we've asked about 5 or 6 times this season. After the Everton game, I asked him, I said, look, that you've been preparing for a team that is great at set pieces. You conceded 2 set piece goals. I mean, how do you react to that? And so, I always find that quite funny. It's almost like people forget that we've asked before. And then when you remind them of that, they go, we'll keep asking every week until he fixes it. It's like, okay, great. It's great stuff. So I asked about it yesterday and I just said to him, because his answer has always been, it's about the bigger picture. That's one element of things, but for me, it's about the bigger picture, and that is like a smaller trend. And so I kind of put to him yesterday, I said, look, I get that you look at the bigger picture, but now we look at the course of the whole season, and I think it's technically officially recorded as 12 set piece goals they've conceded, but I think it's actually 14. There's little things like Højbjerg's wasn't recorded as a set piece goal because it's an own goal. It goes under the own goal column, which is a really weird way of kind of, I suppose, categorizing it in terms of it gives you a slightly false impression of how they've done from set pieces. And so I said, look, it's across a whole season now. There's these 14 set piece goals. And can you see that that's not now just a recent trend? That's a bigger pattern. And he was the answer. I saw some aggregators chop out a middle section of it, which was a bit unfair to what he said. He did, if you're just taking that part out of it, he essentially said, if I think that was the biggest problem about this team right now, I would focus purely on that, which, yeah, in itself sounds like more of a thing. The overall quote itself, I kind of understood half of what he was saying. He was essentially saying that, look, we've got a lot of issues that are preventing us from being in that top level. And he acknowledged this is one of them. And he said that the defending was poor from the set pieces yesterday, from those two moments especially. But he said that there's so much more for me to work on that I don't want to focus on just one area, which is, there's a strand of logic to that. My problem with that is, why can't you do both? Why can't you work on your overall philosophy, get your team playing your brand of football, but also get someone really working with them hard on set pieces in a separate bit of each session or whatever? And I'm sure they do that to a degree, but I don't understand the correlation between the two, because for me, I think in his head, he's saying, like, I don't have a specialist set piece coach because I want it to be all part of the same fluid system. Okay, that's fine. And I get that in the transition after a set piece, but how does that affect your actual set piece defending? That is not a moment of sexy football. That is not a moment of, oh, let's attacking, let's press, let's play around the press from the back. That is a very singular moment where you are defending from a corner or a free kick. It's got nothing to do really with the way Postecoglou plays football. Because look, yeah, people could say, your guys, Everton, they could say, oh, it's all about set pieces. It's all about that. No wonder they concentrate on that, maybe. But then you could go to someone like Man City and Arsenal, who have specialist set piece coaches who are maybe more known for the, attacking lots of goals, stuff like that. But yet they're focusing on that. I don't see why he's separated them into two things. That's my main issue with it. And yeah, I don't get that. Although one thing, can people please stop calling for Gianni Vio to come back to fix Spurs' defensive set pieces? He did not do them. He did not do them. He was in charge of their attacking set pieces. It was Christian Stellini who did the defensive set pieces. So if you want someone to come back, you'd have to get Christian Stellini back, which I'm guessing he's not seen as the sexy name that Gianni Vio is. So the people probably wouldn't want him back. But I was kind of looking back at stuff and talking to people that kind of were in the club at that time and everything. It was quite interesting. They, at that time, under Conte and Stellini, they started off with a hybrid kind of system with set pieces where 5 to 6 of the opposition players were man-marked, and the rest of the team would work zonally. And that kind of quite reasonably quickly ended up becoming zonal marking, because I think they could see it just wasn't a Spurs strength. I think man marking, and it just wasn't something that they were very good at. So they switched to a zonal system, which actually kind of worked for them on the whole. I don't think when you look at the numbers, there was too much of an issue set piece wise. But this season, yeah, zonal's it's bordering on disaster, really, with the amount of you take away a lot of those daft set piece goals they've conceded this season, they're right up there. And this is, I guess, another thing about yesterday's game. It's like Spurs fan kind of, and myself included, we can kind of wail and gripe about the game itself, performance, things like that. I've seen some people saying, oh, they were so open, it was gung-ho. I didn't actually think that was the case. I think they restricted Arsenal to very few chances, but it was just stupid defending from 2 set pieces that really killed them. And the second goal from Saka, we can talk about, that's a little bit different. But what do you think the solution is?
Hard work on the training pitch. He's got to, put a stop to it. I mean, the attacking play is all well and good. Everyone likes to see it, but you've got to look after yourself first and foremost. If you can defend, you're giving yourself a good platform to go on and win games.
It's a basic fundamental thing, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, just going to Everton now. Everton have the second most amount of clean sheets in the Premier League, I think, this season. There's probably only a couple of teams who've conceded more than us. Oh, sorry, fewer than us. I think that's probably like Arsenal, City, Liverpool. Everton are what, 16, 17? It shows you the power of keeping clean sheets, being good and set pieces. And if Spurs can do that, then they can start putting teams away 3 or 4-0 every week if things click for them. It's happening too many times now. And, we'll probably be talking about it a few more times between now and the end of the season. I think unless it gets fixed straight away. I think in terms of Vicario, with no one on him, I think what you want in that sort of situation is, a Christian Romero or a Giovanni Lo Celso type player to be there protecting him. So if like Ben White, if Ben White's backing into him, then give him a shove out of the way. Just make sure he don't do it again.
Yeah, I mean, Madison was doing that. After the Everton City games, they deliberately put him in there. And while, I agree with what you're saying, having maybe a stronger player in there and makes a difference. But I think what Madison was doing was almost highlighting, because he was jostling and going over and falling over, the referee then had to concentrate on it a lot more. And suddenly it was shoving his concentration on those moments. I don't understand why they've come away from that. It actually seemed to solve that problem to a degree. Do you think there's anything on Vicario that he needs to be stronger? I've seen some people are suggesting that as well.
Yeah, I think he needs to be a bit stronger. I think that's probably been pointed out quite a few times since the game at Goodison in February. I think the Man City goal a few weeks before in the Cup, he needed to be stronger in that situation. I think it was with Ruben Diaz. So, he needs to be strong. I think Spurs defensively needs to be stronger. It's something they've got to work on because, one goal can decide the game. And if it's something stupid and so basic from a set piece like that Havertz one was, just watching it back, it's just like it's schoolboy stuff, really.
Oh, it is. Have you seen the image of them all standing, the Spurs players at one side of the box, the Arsenal players all on the other side?
Right.
And they're all kind of like, Spurs are just waiting for something to happen. It looks so bad. I get it. That's what zonal marking is going to be. You are reacting to who comes into your zone in a way. But it looks so amateurish.
I think with zonal marking as well, there's always some confusion around it for the players because they can go, well, he's gone into your area. Why weren't you attacking that ball? So
communication, isn't it? It requires great communication.
Man marking, it's simple. If he scores, that's your man. That's your fault. Spurs need to improve on there because it is becoming very costly. And let's be honest now, Champions League, probably a bit too far away, isn't it? Really.
Maybe. I'm not ruling out entirely yet, purely because I don't think Villa's games are as straightforward as kind of even I thought they were. I was speaking to someone that covers Villa, and they were saying it's not quite as cut and dried for Villa. But Spurs have got to, they've got to get some momentum from somewhere. Otherwise, they're going to peter out their season a bit. And 7 points to still claw back. Obviously, 2 games. It's out of their hands now. It's not good.
It's very much still doable because of the 2 games in hand, but I'm not that confident of Spurs going into games at the moment and winning. And I'm sure that goes with fans as well. But all still to play for. There can still be a lot of twists and turns, but past few games, I think it's going to be Villa in 4th come the end of the season.
Do you think Ange will change his views on specialist set piece coaches?
I don't think so. I think he's pretty stubborn, isn't he? I think in terms of it's his coaching team and that's it. We don't need anyone else coming in. I think they just need to, work on it. More work on the training pitch. If they can do that and cut it out, they could be flying again.
Yeah, I mean, he has always said, and people that work with him have said that there's this kind of perception that, yes, he is very strong in his beliefs in the way things need to be done, but he does evolve over time, and the way he coaches and the things he brings into his his system change over time as well. And even he said at the start of this season, look, I am going to learn about the Premier League. I am going to tweak things and evolve as well as I kind of have more and more experience of it. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm not sure whether that ends up a set piece coach being one of them, but there's no way that he's at the moment not at Hotspur Way thinking, yeah, okay, well this is obviously is an issue. It is. I'm not going to say that publicly. I'm not going to dig out like Mile Jedinak, who's the guy that obviously is mainly in charge of these things. But we need to fix it because otherwise you're going to get into a scenario. And I think this is partly why he doesn't make too big a deal out of it in public, is to try and not create this scenario where every time a set piece goes in, the Spurs players are like, oh, because they're like scared that there's this whole thing about them and set pieces. And even more teams target them. But it is becoming a bit of an issue. Interestingly, they're not the worst among that little teams around there. Villa have conceded more from set pieces. Man U, I think, are roughly the same as Spurs. It's strange that it just does seem to be a little bit of a fault with some of those teams this season. But and the problem is Spurs aren't clicking in the midfield and attack. Like you say, if you've not got a clean sheet behind you, you're just fighting a losing battle. So it's a big area. I think that, again, I can only stress again, I don't think it's quite as all together as Postecoglou is making out. I think it can be a separate thing that can also get fixed while he's building his philosophy around that as well.
I mean, he could bring in a set piece coach, but not in name, just another assistant coach. But really, his work is on set pieces. Something to fix. Definitely.
His name's Chris Stalloni. Definitely not Christian Stellini.
Right, moving on. There was another talking point in the first half. Well, there was a number of them. The first one from a Tottenham perspective was Mickey van der Ven's disallowed goal, which, if it had counted, probably wouldn't have been speaking about 3-2 defeat. That might have swung things in Tottenham's favour because it came at a crucial time. Obviously, the ball fell to Pedro Porro on the edge of the area. He's had a shot, took a couple of ricochets, bounced to Van der Ven, who's then finished, but been given as offside. I don't think the rules like crystal clear because, I mean, for me, I thought if it hits the defender and comes back, you're onside. But I think, is it only if it's being played at by a defender? But then you're looking at the definition of that.
Yeah, it's one of those where kind of whatever way you want to look at the rules, you can probably find a way to justify whatever your viewpoint on it is. The rules seem to suggest that, there has to be a deliberate action to, in essence, clear the ball or pass the ball for it to then count as something that could mean an offside player is then onside from the opposition team. And I guess it comes down to defining whether you felt that either of the Arsenal touches fell into that category. For me, they're probably more trying to block the shot than trying to clear it or pass it. So I guess if that is the exact definition, you could probably find a way to say it was a fair decision, although I'm sure Spurs fans wouldn't agree. It was a good finish from Mickey van der Ven, actually. It was a really nice, composed finish. It was a shame. Like you say, it came at a moment where Spurs had been playing well, had got hit with a sucker punch of Højbjerg, kind of knocking it into his own net, and had Van der Ven, I think it was only 6-7 minutes later, put the ball in the net at the other end. You could probably say, okay, well, there you go. They showed that was a blip, that little kind of sucker punch. They can crack on and really kind of push home their advantage now. And having that taken away, you could feel a little bit of the kind of this deflation among the Spurs players. You could just feel it did knock them a bit. I still hate the fact that we just can't celebrate goals anymore. It's just like such a waste of time. I never really get excited about anything that goes in the net now. It's just very much like, let's wait to see. My actual initial reaction always is, that's probably offside. I just kind of expect it not to be a goal, and then we'll go from there. But it's such a shame. And yes, there are many ways to look at it, and the rule needs to be a little bit clearer. I think semi-automated offsides are going to help. as much as I'm not a massive fan of some of the technology in football, I think getting it closer to some kind of idea, a bit like the goal line technology, is fine by me. But then I suppose this one still would come down to the subjective of how you decide whether what they would do in the Arsenal players involved in the move. It's not as easy, kind of cut and dried, I think, as some people are looking at it and maybe suggesting it is. And then you get people saying VAR shouldn't be used for this because it's not a clear and obvious error because it was such a marginal offside, but then offside doesn't include clear and obvious. You don't actually apply that to offside. That's supposed to be a yes/no decision more than clear and obvious. But yeah, that was one of a few moments, at least in the first half, that we kind of like, oh, was that a sliding doors moment? Had that gone a slightly different way, it could have affected the rest of the game.
The next one was Dane Kulusevski going down in the area. This was seconds before Bukayo Saka went down the other end and scored. Does get a clip from Leandro Trossard. Minimal contacts, but given you're running at full pelt, and any little bit of contact's going to put you down to the ground. And yeah, I think looking back at it now, it's a penalty. I think looking at it initially, just because he doesn't go down straight away, it's just like he's stumbling. But yeah, I think that was a penalty. Obviously, James Madison, he went down literally straight away with Declan Rice tackling him, but Rice clearly won the ball and Madison's gone down far too easily. But for me, that was a penalty on Kulusevski, and I think you'd agree.
Yeah, that's the one I would say I think Spurs were harshly done on. I think you can argue the Van de Ven kind of decision probably fits within the rules, but I just think, that Kulusevski moment with Trossard, if Trossard clips his heels, knocks one foot into the other for Kulusevski, and he goes down while running, outside the box, every single time that's a free kick. Every single time. Whereas it's happened in the box, and weirdly, I don't think Kulusevski actually helped himself by trying to stay on his feet, which is such a sad thing to say. It's like we moan about players going to ground too easily, and he's tried to stay up, and in a way has probably made the contact look even more minimal because of that. I did think that was a penalty. And again, Kulusevski didn't really claim for it, which I don't think probably helped either. There was not enough fuss made around it. And then maybe that's where the clear and obvious thing comes in, and whether they felt like it wasn't that obvious that the referee and the officials had made a mistake or not. And then we know what happens next. They sweep it up the pitch. Saka's suddenly in oceans of space, which again, that's poor defending. Regardless, Postecoglou was quite annoyed about that as well. He felt that they spent too much time, the other players, moaning about that decision rather than concentrating on getting back. I think it was Ben Davies left 1v1 with him, and then Van de Ven eventually got back. But I've seen people kind of criticising Davies for kind of letting him get inside, but he's kind of running full pelt at him. I don't really know. It's a difficult one to try and maneuver Saka down the left in that moment. He's got so much space to get into. And it was a decent finish, but it's just the overall defending and the ability of the midfield to be switched on to get back as well. And I think that kind of was a big moment for me, I think, in Postecoglou not being happy with the midfield. I kind of felt like, I know there was a halftime change. I think he could have changed it even earlier at that point. Again, another sliding doors moment, though. I still think it goes back to the Kulusevski moment, which, again, I would give as a free kick anywhere else on the pitch.
Yeah, I thought with Saka's goal, obviously he's clear on that side of the pitch when Havertz, switches it to him. Ben Davies is aware he's there. I've watched it back. You can see him. He looks over his shoulder a couple of times, but when he's running, he just runs straight, towards goal rather than moving across to Saka. And I thought the moment had gone for Saka to have the shot because he had acres of space to, shoot on his right, takes it in on his left. Good finish, but I thought, making a bit more difficult for yourselves there. But yeah, just another poor goal to concede from a Spurs perspective.
Yeah, and then the third goal's just
Yeah.
it's just this yeah. Other than the Ben White moment, which I do think that if someone's looking more closely at that, you can see that as a kind of a moment. But then also, it's so difficult because players jostle in the box. You see it all the time. You see them grabbing each other, see them pushing each other. But we're kind of led to believe that keepers have that little bit more protection from that. And yeah, I do think there's an element of Vicario will learn from this season. I think I've seen some people saying he should be sold, which was a funny one. Yeah, I think he's very much coming into a new league where it's far more physical in terms of these aspects of play. And yeah, he'll adapt, he'll learn. He's not. It was very. He was not going to have a perfect season in his first year in the Premier League. He's done a lot of things right, but there's things that he knows. I'm sure that he can go away and work on and fix. And I think his strength around set pieces. I know there's also, if a goalkeeper goes in too strong in a set piece, they give away a penalty. We've seen those given, but there's definitely a little bit more he can do, and he can organise people. There's no reason he can't tell a player to come back and get in the way of someone that's bothering him. That's kind of part of his thing as well. And the way Spurs set up from set pieces should give him the latitude to be able to do that if he needs it. Yeah, I'm still bewildered by the fact that they've taken away the person that was doing that role because it made an impact. But I don't know. Maybe they just thought, oh, everyone's forgotten about set pieces now. Don't worry. It's like, no, we haven't. They're still rubbish.
What did you make of Spurs then in the first half? Because for me, had a lot of the ball, but just didn't really do enough with it. I think watching it back, a lot of the play was central, just in crowded areas. But credit to Arsenal for defending and frustrating them. But I don't even think David Raya had a save to make during the game.
No, he didn't. He didn't have a single save to make. That was the weird thing about the game, is that Arsenal only had 3 shots on target, scored 3 goals, albeit obviously one of those was actually Højbjerg putting it into his own net. And Spurs only had 2 shots on target all game and scored 2 goals. It was such a weird game. This is what I'm saying. It wasn't a 5-goal thriller of a game that the scoreline would suggest it was. It was very much a kind of, it's quite a stalemate in a lot of ways. So odd. And this was it. Everyone kind of was in this thought of, it's going to be end-to-end crazy stuff, Postecoglou's wild gung-ho style, but it wasn't that kind of game. I was trying to do, even my player ratings at half-time were a nightmare because it was like certain players hadn't really done that badly. The scoreline was 3-0 and it was just looked absolutely terrible. But yeah, no, I'm with you. I agree. I think they dominated the ball. Did they use it well enough? No. I think Kulusevski, we'll talk about, had a good game, but obviously, like you say, with a crowded, congested middle of the pitch, him naturally coming inside is only going to add to that as well. Timo Werner early on, before he went off, was trying to get him behind and get some balls across, but the quality wasn't there. I still do think there's issues of when Son plays as a central striker, he does a lot of things really well, but he also will come out of position quite a lot. And there was quite a few moments in that first half when I looked into the box and there was no one in it. And it was a bit like, well, if they get the ball in the box, what difference does it make? And they're just, that's why they end up playing around outside the box. I did think that when Richarlison came on, he only touched the ball 7 times, but suddenly there was someone up there that could hold the ball up, that would be in the areas that gave the Arsenal defenders something to think about. And I don't think it's any coincidence both goals came after he came onto the pitch. I'm not saying he was directly involved in them, but he kind of just, his presence almost played a part in them coming along. So I thought, in a weird way, I know it sounds ridiculous when you're 3-0 down at halftime, Spurs were kind of the better team in terms of the play in the first half, but ultimately they weren't the better team with their defending from set pieces, and that was really what killed them in that first half. Whereas second half, I actually felt that Arsenal got a lot stronger hold on the game, yet conceded 2 goals. Honestly, it's such a difficult game to analyse. It was just a complete mess, turned around upside down kind of game.
Yeah, I thought Arsenal cut through them too easy at times as well. I thought they were too open in midfield, and no
But didn't
surprise.
create anything when they got past that point, Arsenal. That was a weird thing.
Yeah, I think it was probably only the Saka chance, wasn't it? Straight after half time, what Vicario saved.
And I think that would have been offside. There looked like there was an offside in the build-up. I can't remember who it was, the player that had it just before him. Yeah, so yeah, that was it. That was their one kind of. But again, it's 3-2. I hate kind of going down the road of they defended really well, because they didn't. But yeah, other than the 3 goals they conceded, they kept them out, which just sounds utterly stupid.
Right, before we speak more about the North London derby defeat, Ali, do you want to tell everyone about the benefits of using NordVPN?
Oh, I tell you, I need to be using NordVPN and just going off on holiday right now. There is nothing worse than coming after a North London derby defeat and having to write and talk about it. It's, I appreciate that it's rubbish for the fans as well, but then having to kind of make it your job to write about that mess you've just seen is not great. And yes, I would love to be able to use NordVPN to head off across the world and be able to use that as I enjoy my travels. I even had someone yesterday, as I was walking to the game, had made a little joke about NordVPN and listening and enjoying the podcast, and we've become synonymous with the words NordVPN now, which is really weird. Maybe they should in their logo incorporate the two of us, Golden Guest. But yeah, the reason we talk about it is because so many people have had real success with using it, and thankfully, and which is great. A lot of them have come from listening to our podcast as well, which is fantastic as well. It's, as I said before, it's the fastest VPN in the world. It means there's no buffering, no lagging, and you can stream your favorite shows from anywhere in the world without your bandwidth throttling, which is something I've done so many times with it. I'm heading away again soon. I shall be using it on my travels, both work and kind of personal travels. Work to be able to kind of connect to stuff back home that I wouldn't be able to access if I was normally when I'm abroad, and my personal stuff just to watch like TV shows and films and sports and things like that being abroad kind of stops you from normally doing it, but I can just set my device to thinking it's back in the UK. And not only with all of that, but the outlay on the NordVPN subscription is cheaper for you in the long run. That's because you can purchase streaming services or bookings from other countries at a much cheaper rate. So, for example, if you wanted to go on a holiday, let's say to Italy, you could maybe book your flights from Italy, making your device think it's in Italy rather than book the flights from the UK, and it might end up cheaper for you in that way. So it means you're paying out for Nord, but you're actually saving money overall. There's a whole host of other benefits from signing up to NordVPN, so why not give it a go? To get the best discount off your NordVPN plan, go to nordvpn.com/goldguest. There's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. And also, every time you sign up for it, with that URL, you're helping support our podcast. And if you missed that link, it's in the episode description box.
So Tottenham 3-0 down at half-time. Pat Matasar introduced at the start of the second half. I was a bit surprised he didn't start, to be honest. I thought that was like almost a certainty for him to come in after the Newcastle game, just for the energy and the work rate in the midfield in such an important game. I thought he played really well. I thought he did okay when he came on. Certainly added to the game. Bentancur was...
I was going to say, what did you think of Bentancur?
I thought he did okay. Progressive with his passing, still not the same Bentancur we're expecting, but you certainly want the worst on the pitch on the day, put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, when the team news came out in the press room beforehand, I was kind of in the minority that I actually became, I think a bit of my optimism that I was starting to grow just kind of subsided a little bit. I didn't like the team lineup. I didn't like the balance in midfield. I know, it sounds like I'm saying it with hindsight, but you can talk to anyone in the press room if you like. I was kind of moaning a little bit about, I just didn't like. I know there's a lot of people that felt Bissouma's been out of form, which he has, and that Højbjerg was the right kind of time to come in. I didn't agree with that. I thought Bissouma played really well against Arsenal in the reverse fixture, and I just felt that Arsenal were going to press quite high up, and that would put some kind of pressure on Højbjerg, who maybe isn't as good in those scenarios. Actually, as it was, Arsenal didn't really press that high up. They kind of sat back. I mean, as Arteta said in his quote, Spurs did force them to sit back. So maybe there was less pressure on Højbjerg. But I just feel like it just hasn't worked with Højbjerg in this system. It just hasn't really worked for him at all. I've got some stats about him which are not very kind. Let me see if I can find them here. Somewhere down here. In essence, he's only won once when he started for Spurs this season, which is which is not a great stat at all. Let me see if I can find it so I can be exact about it.
But have you looked at those games and which games there were? Because I don't think it's fair for some people, to paint Højbjerg as a Jonah, and the fact that if he starts, they always lose. Because I think the games off the top of my head, what he started, Wolves away, Spurs should have held on and won that.
Yeah, that's fair.
Man U, the drew, fair result. Everton probably should have hung on and won that. So that was 94th, 95th minute goal. Brighton as a team, they were horrendous that day at the Amex. West Ham, I didn't watch that game, so I can't really comment on that. But can you remember any of the other games he's played?
I can't. It would have been the cup as well. So it would have been Fulham, Carabao Cup. Obviously, that's penalties. Man City FA Cup. I think he started that as well. I have a feeling.
Yes, 90 minutes he played. Yes. Yeah.
So yeah, and I mean, yeah, I agree to an extent, but I do think in some of those performances, he's like Wolves. Yeah, I agree that they were poor towards the ending and they should have held on, but he is part of that defensive structure that's supposed to be helping them hold on. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think he's just been so much better as a bit of a super sub and coming in and solidifying games weirdly. Whereas, 9 starts and he's lost all but 3 of them and only won 1. And I just think it points towards a trend with him in the something about the midfield isn't quite as maybe confident is the word. I don't know, but yeah, and I like Højbjerg. I do think he gets a lot of unnecessary kind of stick, whereas as a whole this season he's still contributed a fair bit. But something about him in the starting lineup doesn't quite work for me in the Postecoglou system. Bentancur, I agree with you. I thought it was tough on him to come off at half time, but if you're going to pick Sarr to come on, you're probably not going to put Bentancur at 6. I still don't think right now in the form he's in that number 6 is quite right for him. I think it puts too much pressure on him. Actually, I was going to ask you about Romero. I'll save it for Romero a bit. Remind me to ask you about stuff. It will ask now because we're talking about midfield. Romero is a number 6. I've seen that idea floated. Your thoughts?
He's got all the attributes to play there, and that would, work in Radu Dragić's favour as well. So he could get a run of games. It'd also allow Romero to stay up front if he wants, like towards the end of yesterday. Whether or not I can actually see that happening, I'm not so sure, because he's built up a really good partnership with Mickey van der Ven. I think he'll stay at centre back, and I think Tottenham need to look at bringing a new number 6. In the summer. That's got to be a priority. But as an alternative, it's not a bad shout, but I'd be surprised if it happens.
Yeah, I get the idea behind it, and I do think he's got a lot of the technical attributes to be good in it. However, as you mentioned there, I think he would be a nightmare discipline-wise in terms of he would feel that he could roam even more than he currently does. I think now, despite the fact that we've seen him in some random positions yesterday, at the back of his mind, it's still like, oh yeah, I've got to go back in the back line. I've got to be defender. I'm a centre back. Whereas I think if he's in the midfield as a number 6, I think he roams and feels even less kind of need to get back to where he was. And also, he's a bit of a leader in the back line. I probably wouldn't take him out of that role. That it suddenly becomes a very, very young central core to the back line. But yeah, no, I just thought it was quite an interesting one. I can see the merits to it, but I just think it's a little bit too much of a wild card for me in that regard. But Sarr, I did think Sarr was bright. I actually thought Basuma came on and did well after kind of all of that. And he still was. My thing with him at the moment, it just is the bit I would love to see if they do, which they are hoping to bring in the number 6 this summer. I don't feel that he's got the through ball in his locker. That's my problem. There were so many times when he would actually get to quite good areas on the kind of cusp of the Arsenal final third for Spurs, and you could see he, a little bit like Dembele maybe back in the day, didn't really know what to do with the ball in those moments. And I would love it if you, and that's actually, if you could see that's something that Højbjerg can do quite well, and it's something that Bentancur could do quite well. But if you can combine what Basuma brings you in the Tottenham half with what maybe some of the other players can do in the opposition half, you'd get an absolutely cracking number 6. And I just think that's the thing missing from his game. It might be a confidence thing. It might be just he doesn't have the ability to thread the ball through. I don't know. But definitely I felt like Spurs looked better. They looked a little bit better shape in terms of having a platform of pushing the ball forward after he came on. And yeah, I still just don't think Højbjerg is part of the future. I think that's his biggest problem as well in Ange's eyes.
I think for Ange's midfield system, it's quite clear to see Basuma as a number 6 instead of Højbjerg. It works better, but for me, Basuma's played himself out of the team recently.
He's his own worst enemy this season.
Yeah. His performances have been really bad, and I didn't think it was a bad thing bringing Højbjerg in for a derby. I think you want a bit of bite, a bit of steel in midfield, and that's what he gave the team at times yesterday. Basuma, I thought, played really well when he came on. Looked more like his old self. And that might have been a result of the fact that he was dropped from the team for such an important game, and maybe, give him the kick up the backside that he might have needed. And
well, it's the first time. It's the first time he's actually kind of been dropped. I mean, you could argue he started on the bench after he came back from the Africa Cup of Nations, but that's kind of understandable. This was the first time
him back in, isn't it?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, this was the first time he was fully available and ready, and Ange went, "No, you're on the bench." So that, yeah, you're right. It could end up being a big thing, or he could take it the way he did under Conte maybe last year, and it didn't really work for him.
Yeah, so some were saying, "Oh, Spurs are the one." If Basuma had started, well, there's no guarantee his performance in the second half would have been what he did from the first minute. He might have followed on from Newcastle and the Nottingham Forest games before that. But it was good to see him, getting on the ball and putting in the big tackle on Thomas Partey as well in midfield. That got the fans up as well. Yes, maybe it will be Basuma back in the team on Thursday at Chelsea. I think there'll be changes there. For me, James Madison shouldn't be in the team. James Madison was lucky to be on the pitch 65 minutes yesterday. He could have come off a lot earlier. Just anonymous, really, just having no influence on proceedings at all. I think he had a shot early on after like 2 or 3 minutes, blazed over. But for a player of that quality, you want them, to stand up and be counted, grab the game by the scruff of the neck. And a lot at the start of the season we're saying like James Madison's going to be signing of the summer. Kai Havertz, who moved for a similar fee, probably be like one of the worst ones, given he didn't really do it at Chelsea. But I thought Havertz were one of the best players on the pitch yesterday, Madison not. So Basuma's been dropped. Maybe it is Madison who drops on Thursday.
It's a big call, isn't it? I'm with you. I thought that was maybe his worst performance for Spurs this season.
Even in other performing, you shouldn't be on the pitch, and you can't go, well, he's been Spurs' most creative player this season. Well, has he been Spurs' most creative player of late? No. So you can't go because he's one of the top names at the club. He's guaranteed a place in the team. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah, I agree. No, I think you're right. No, what I mean, more of a big call from in terms of Postecoglou, I guess, and the message he might feel he's sending in dropping one of the vice captains, but maybe that's not a bad thing. Yeah, I mean, with Madison, even in games where he hasn't been that great since coming back, there's still moments where he got an assist or a goal, or he could have had an assist if the finish had been better from someone else. But I mean, I had a little look at his stats. I mean, first 17 games for Spurs in the Premier League, 11 goal involvement, 7 assists and 4 goals. Last 6 matches, not a single thing. Not a goal, not an assist. That's a month and a half ago since he's actually contributed directly to a goal. And yesterday was kind of, he's an incredibly talented player and he's got so much quality in a lot of the things he does. But yesterday was one of those games that helped his critics, I felt. It was one of the games where he just seemed to spend more time looking for free kicks than thinking what he could do with the ball instead. And look, he won a couple of clever free kicks early on in the game, which I could understand the logic behind it, but almost he lent on that a bit too much. And even like, the moment after Kulusevski went down, when he kind of dribbles through and he kind of goes down, they got the ball. It was clearly the ball was got. It was all very theatrical. And there's moments like that I don't think him actually doing him any favours. I do think he's generally fouled a lot. I think he's one of the most fouled players in the Premier League. But yeah, there was a lot more I wanted to see him do. I wanted to see him act as one of the vice captains. I wanted to see him grab the game by the scruff of the neck. He did it at the Emirates. 2 assists. He was really good in that game. There's no reason why he couldn't have done it in this one. And especially when the Spurs came to rely on him quite a lot before his injury. And at the moment, they're not really being able to rely on him. And yeah, I'm with you. I wouldn't be against him watching a game from the bench. I think the way Kulusevski looked in the role, Kulusevski roves a little bit more in the role. He was meant to be on the left of the midfield three and end up kind of coming back to the right a few times. That's my only worry about him sometimes in that role. But I do think that him having a good game on the merits of form probably would deserve it. But yeah, it's a real shame about Madison. I don't know whether he's still getting any lingering ankle issues or if there's something more to it we're not aware of. But yeah, it's a shame because at the moment he's a little bit of a shadow of the player we know he can be. And I do feel like that's been one of the biggest kind of blows for Postecoglou, has been that a lot of the key players that I think were so spectacular at the start of the season. You're looking at probably Basuma, Madison, Sonny to a degree. Sonny still weighed in with some important moments, but on the whole, he hasn't quite reached what he was doing earlier on. I think those kind of three through the spine of the pitch in a way. And even I'd maybe throw Pedro Porro in there as well. I think Pedro Porro was such a creative outlet for Spurs, but that's really dried up for him too. That's been a big kind of miss for him, and then maybe not having the players to come in and to replace them, I suppose, just for the odd game or two, just to kickstart them.
Yeah, Madison's only played the full 90 minutes once since he's come back from injury in 12 games. Come off, and a few of them quite late on, but recent ones, you're looking maybe 60, 70-minute mark. It's just not worked for him recently. And I think if there is to be a change, then it will be Dejan Kulusevski playing as the number 10. I thought that's probably one of his best performances for quite some time for Spurs.
Yeah.
Because he has found himself on the bench recently. Thought he did well when he was on the right wing, tried to take the game to Arsenal. Worked well defensively as well. Some big defensive contributions in terms of his numbers. But with him, it's just like, it's the final pass, maybe just delaying it sometimes. He's too predictable at times. And like we said, when he was such a congested middle of the pitch at times, having him coming inside doesn't exactly help matters. But I thought he was good yesterday. And I think, if there used to be a change in the number 10, then he'll go there. I thought Celso should have come on a lot earlier, especially in a derby match as well. Someone to give you a bit more bite in there. You see what he did as soon as he came on? When I think they're taking kickoff, it was when Richarlison went into Gabriel. Because if you notice from kickoff, when the striker runs, Gabriel will always move into the path of the striker to block them off. So Richie just charged into him, just knocked him off, and then I think Celso pretty much like went in with his hand on Saliba. So he was doing the same as well. But yeah, he was certainly up for it. But again, when they come on, 88th minute, barely any time to make an impact. And he's got to feel so frustrated at the moment with his game time, especially when Madison's not been on it of late. He should have had more of a run in the team. But yeah, fingers crossed he'll get a bit more game time at Stamford Bridge. But I think if there's going to be a change, it'll be Kulusevski moving centrally and then having Johnson and Son either side of him.
Yeah, no, I agree on Lo Celso, absolutely. There's a part of me that wonders, this was something that was levelled against him in the past. I'm not saying this is what's happened this season because I'm not sure whether it's the same, but there was a suggestion in the past that when he wasn't playing, he wasn't, how do I put this? He didn't take it that well. It's probably the best way to put it. So I don't know whether that's the case under Postecoglou. It might not be. It may be that he's kind of matured and grown and, he's a different kind of guy now. But I just wonder, it just seems so odd that he's got this option there who's a fighter, a battler, and also has really lovely kind of creativity. He can play the through passes. And then when you've got a player like Madison who hasn't been on his game, you've kind of got almost a near perfect replacement to come on the pitch. And yeah, like you say, he's kind of getting on for like 7-8 minutes here and there at the end of games. And again, I go back to what I've said in the past. He was sold this kind of idea of becoming a bigger part of the squad and the team this year, and it just hasn't really happened for him. Some of it is own kind of problems with injuries and stuff like that, but there's been so many opportunities recently to give him a go, and that's what makes me just wonder. Is he kind of not reacting too well to not starting? I don't know, or has he made it clear that he's looking to try and get out this summer? I don't know. This is all wild speculation because I just can't understand why there's not a natural inclination for Postecoglou to just give him a little bit more of time to kind of convince otherwise. And yeah, look, Kulusevski's done well in the role, but it's a natural fit for Lo Celso. Why is he not getting the first shot at that? So yeah, I'm interested to see the reaction from Postecoglou with his lineup against Chelsea, because he did make quite a pointed comment when I asked him about Romero, which we'll talk about. And you kind of wonder, well, okay, if you want more from certain players, why would you not put in a player like Celso who gives you 100% and it is a bit of a fiery character when you put him on the pitch? And in a derby against either Arsenal or Chelsea, he's kind of bring that, isn't it? Who was he almost sent off against, or should have been sent off? It was Chelsea, wasn't it? I think a couple of seasons back.
What happened?
Was it on? Oh my goodness, it's gone out of my head. The Spanish fullback for Chelsea.
What did he do?
Azpilicueta. Didn't he go in on Azpilicueta with like a high boot or something? Was it him?
Oh,
I'm trying to.
I can't remember.
I feel like there was one he really got away with it. I feel like it was Chelsea, and everyone was like, "Yeah, he really should have got sent off for that," and he didn't. I think even VAR may have checked it and decided it wasn't. But yeah, but my point kind of remains: is you get a bit of fire in there. It might not be the worst thing to kind of. Maybe he's not fit enough to play, an hour or not. I don't know, but I would like to see a few changes for that game.
Well, he's never going to be fit to play an hour,
No,
is he? If he's getting 7 or 8 minutes at the end of the game,
not at all.
it's always going to work against him. I thought Brennan Johnson played well when he came on. He was better when he went over to the right and running at Tomiyasu. I think Martinelli, he was there second half, causing them problems, just really direct. And I think that's probably just the result of the confidence what's probably in him over the past few months, contributing with these big moments. And I thought if anyone was going to create something late on, it was going to be him. So I think he's played his way into the team. On the opposite side, I thought Son were really, really poor.
Wasn't a good day for him. I only bumped him up in my final ratings because of the penalty, which was a really nice penalty under pressure. I gave him essentially an extra couple of points for that. Yeah, otherwise, just barely involved.
Yeah, I think it was that everyone pretty much knew, like, if Richarlison's fully fit, have him up front as the focal point, and that'll get the best out of Son on the left. But even when Son was on the left, he wasn't really running at Ben White. I think it was only after he scored the penalty where that seemed to lift him, and then he started to run at Ben White a bit more and try to get into the area. Yeah, he just didn't have an impact on the game, and there's a lot of times when the balls fall into him outside the area and he's not shooting for whatever reason. But I mean, that's not just Son, that's a number of the others when it falls to him in good areas, Kulusevski being one of them. But for someone who's contributed in such, key moments for Spurs in the past, especially in the derby as well, you just expect more from him. I just wonder if it's a lack of confidence at the moment. I mean, playing up front, you're never going to get a lot of change out of Gabriel and Saliba anyway. But yeah, he's another who just needs to be doing more. And you touched on it earlier. I thought Richarlison, made the difference when he came on. That was literally straight away. I think, was it within a minute or so? Probably less than that when they scored. And that's him charging at the keeper and Romero being in such an advanced position because he made the pass to Richarlison in the corner and then carried on his run. And yeah, he definitely put himself about. Certainly went into Gabriel, his international teammate. I think Gabriel's in the Brazil squad. Yeah, that was quite funny. That
I thought you might like that. Yeah, I'd agree with all of that. Really, Brennan Johnson, I thought was very direct in his play. I do prefer him on the right. They ended the game with the three up front that I'd said in, we do our Guesty and I, we as well as a predicted team, Guesty and I kind of do a team a couple of days before that we would like to see out on the pitch. And in that, I had the front three of Son, Richarlison, and Johnson. I just kind of felt that's got a really nice balance to it. It's got a focal point. It's got someone that's fantastic on the left. It's got someone that's really direct on the right. And so, when I saw the kind of even the front line, the way it was, I was a bit like, I don't know that's got the same balance. And I don't think it's any coincidence that they ended the game with a lot more kind of verve about the way that they were getting forward. And Johnson, it's kind of almost let down in a way by the kind of the options he had to play into. The amount of times he got to the byline and, like you say, beat Tomiyasu and then was pulling it back into an area where there wasn't enough people there or bodies in there to make something of it. I thought he did well. Yeah, Sonny was. My biggest disappointment was that I kind of felt like, and Sonny's been a brilliant captain this season. I think he's been really good in so many different aspects. But I felt like Romero kind of had to take charge of the game yesterday as a leader, and Sonny and Madison both maybe were a bit more in the background and had, all three steps up. It's probably a different game you're looking at entirely. Richarlison did well. Werner didn't do much in his little spell. I didn't feel it didn't really kind of make a mark before he went off. And and it's definitely an area I think we'll see changes. I think midfield and up front especially, I think you're going to see a couple of extra bodies in different roles. And, in the midfield, you've got Lucas Bergvall coming in there. He's not going to be an instant solution, but he is going to be someone that's going to be very suited to the number 8 role as he adapts. And up front, I think we'll see a few additions there, whether that's likely to be a new striker, but I would imagine a couple of wingers. I've said this before. I think we'll see a couple of those options bolstered. And there was someone else that was at the game as well yesterday in terms of went along with the squad was young Mikey Moore. Mikey Moore, he was the 21st man, so he wasn't part of the match day squad, but he was there in case there was an illness or injury after the game. Before the game and the warm up and stuff like that. Massive experience for a 16-year-old, and it just shows you how far he's come in these last couple of weeks working with the first team. He's impressed so many people. And who knows? I really have got a funny feeling he'll end up going to Melbourne on the postseason trip. And I wouldn't be shocked if that then leads to maybe a pre-season trip with the team. And he'll be 17 in August. Who knows? Who knows whether he ends up being a little bit of a part of kind of some of Spurs stuff next season. It may be that it's like, we hope they're going to be in Europe, even if it's just involved in those. But that's quite exciting. I'm not putting too much on him because he's still very young. There's a lot of work he's got to do. Hasn't even played for the under-21s really yet. So, but I did think that was quite interesting. And Postecoglou didn't play him down when I asked about him on Friday ahead of the game. And to then give him this kind of, you can see him walking in alongside Madison. He's a very confident young man as well. So he's not going to be fazed by any of it. These young players like him and Bergvall coming through, Jamie Donnelly coming through as well. Still intrigued to see what happens with Will Lancashire and how he develops. But then you add some additions to that, and I do think the options in midfield and up front are going to look a lot different next season.
Does Mikey Moore come into the squad on Thursday if there's no Timo Werner? There's going to be a place there.
Oh, that's a great shot. I hadn't thought of that. Is anyone likely to be back? Probably not from the injured bunch, are there?
Other option, Oliver Skip, because he wasn't in the squad again.
Oh, you're kind of losing an
But then,
attacker, though, aren't you?
yeah,
Yeah,
I
maybe.
I don't think that's a
Or
bad
Jamie
shout.
Donnelly. Or Jamie Donnelly. Depends, doesn't it?
I just think after 2 defeats, needing to bounce back in the London derby, having a local lad on the bench isn't a bad thing, and that'd lift the fans. And even if it was to come on for just like a minute,
Or
that's
even just not
huge.
to come on in a weird way.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
to kind of, I get what you mean. I do think it's a big shout to put a 16-year-old on there over someone like Jamie Donnelly, who's, 18, 19. And I think you could probably argue over the course of the season has probably deserved that chance. I completely forgot about that. There is going to be an extra spot. It's a funny one because, even like Brian Hill being on the bench, it's a bit like yesterday. I was kind of thinking he's never coming on in a million years. It's almost like, and he's going to leave in the summer. He's going to want to go and play regular football. Postecoglou seemed in no desperate rush to kind of keep him in January. I think he would have been fine with him going to Brighton on loan. So yeah, you do kind of wonder, would you not be better spent kind of giving some of these young players a bit more experience on the bench? But it's a good shout. I hadn't thought about that. There is going to be an extra spot. Actually, on Werner, we know it's a hamstring injury he picked up. He didn't look, from what I'm told, to be too. Sorry, the other way around. He looked quite downbeat going through the mix zone, and didn't seem to be too kind of. I don't know. I don't want to read too much in it, but yeah, he didn't look in a too happy about kind of what had happened. Not that he would. If let's say that's his season done. I'm not saying it is, but if it is, has he done enough to get the permanent move?
And you've got a bunch of stats to back up a permanent move.
Well, no, that was then. That was then. I would actually say my reasoning behind that maybe was more based on how he ended the season and what more he was going to bring. If you're cutting that short to that, I do wonder whether he's then come in a little bit short, mainly because of the wages. I'd still do think as a squad option, I don't think he's a bad signing at all. But I think if you're looking at the wages and then what he's been able to contribute, he might not have done enough to actually earn the deal.
I think in terms of the transfer fee, it's pretty good in today's market. If you can maybe get the wages down, I think he's performed well when he's played. There's obviously times when he's in the final third and his shooting's erratic, to say the least. Needs to do a bit more in terms of that. But maybe just as taking Brian Hill's place on a permanent basis, and then you look at bringing in another winger, maybe. But then is that going to work for Timo Werner if he's going to have a bit part role?
Well, that's it, and that's why I'm saying the wages comes into it, because you're paying big money for a kind of like a squad rotation option, and those are the kind of wages you probably put towards someone that you're expecting to start every week. So yeah, that's more what I mean. Like, I think my thinking was that if he continued what he was doing the last 6 games of the season, contributed more and more and more, then you could see a trend. Whereas I think, I wonder whether it's been cut a little bit short and he ends up maybe being seen as a helpful, experienced option for this season, but maybe they then don't take it permanently. But we'll see. They maybe decide otherwise.
I mean, he fits into Ange's system, and I think Ange can get even more out of him. I mean, what is he, about 10, 12 games into his Tottenham career? Maybe slightly more since he moved there. Still think there's more to come from him, and I think overall he's done okay.
Okay. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, it may not be that bad a problem. We may get another 2, 3, 4 games out of him, so we'll see. But we've got to talk about Romero. We haven't really spoken properly about Romero yet. What did you make of him?
Excellent. Spurs' best player on the pitch. Didn't deserve to be on the losing side. Didn't agree with what you said. He was Spurs' captain, probably in all but name yesterday. He was the one, leading the charge and that. I think you know what you're going to get from Christian Romero, and what Ange said was right. He needs to get a bit of what in Romero into the others. Really. Yeah, I thought it was good. Unlucky with his headers, that one against the post.
Yeah.
Couple of inches other way, that's in, and then had one what just went over in the second half. Took his goal well as well. It
It
could
was
have
a really
quite
good
easily
finish.
dragged
Yeah.
that wide. I mean, that was shambolic from Raya.
Yeah.
I don't know what he was even attempting there. Was it a chip
I
or
don't
something?
know. Yeah, it was a strange one.
Yeah, took it well, and then yeah, just been really advanced at times as well towards the end, wanting to play up front, get Spurs back into it. Yeah, really good player.
Yeah, it was. I mean, look, I don't think he was perfect. I still think I'd like to see a lot of that leadership that he showed brought into the organisation of the back line. I do think that he can bring more to that, but I do think I just love the fact that he was not having that scoreline yesterday. He was not. He's like, no, like this is not how this game should be done. Why are we all kind of, down about this? Let's get on this. And he just drove at them. There was one tackle he did on, I think it was Tomiyasu. Honestly, the noise of his foot against the ball. And even Tomiyasu just looked stunned. It didn't hurt Tomiyasu. Tomiyasu was on the floor. He just knew he'd been absolutely kind of smashed into with a really good tackle. And he was just like that around the pitch. Defending was really good. He had 4 tackles, 2 clearances, blocked 2 shots, won 5 aerial duels, pass success rate of 97% as well. And he was trying some decent passes. It wasn't just like it was all short stuff. He even put a cross into the box as well, just to show what he was. He was actually Spurs' best attacker. He had 4 efforts on goal. Obviously, the one on target was a finish. He, like you say, chested it down really well, rolled it into the corner like a striker would. And there was one moment, when he was up front and he just looked back and he was looking at Postecoglou as if to say, it was like kind of like when a kid looks back at their parent to see whether they're going to get told off for doing something naughty or whether they're allowed to keep doing it. And that was kind of what he was doing. He just kept looking back and it was like, oh, cool, I can stay up here. And he just stayed up there as a centre forward. And then eventually he did like a thank you kind of signal. And I couldn't tell whether he was doing it at Postecoglou for letting him do it or whether he was doing it for Basuma, who'd had to come back and act as a centre back. But no, he was excellent. And he did look a good kind of tweet after the game, which I liked it as well. Look, it may not have been him. It may be some social media manager he has did it, but it just worked for me. And he said, head up and carry on. This is what it's all about sometimes. I'm more than ever with this team. We will work and finish this season the best way. Thank you for always being fans. And then his little catchphrase he's now got all together always that he always puts on everything. And look, I know it's a gimmicky thing. And again, it might not even be the player. It might be their social media team that do it. I like to see players after games, especially defeats, just come out there and say something to the fans. I like that communication. I like, especially someone that's the captain type, to be doing that all the time. It was one of kind of my bugbears about, it was difficult. With Lloris wasn't on social media, so you'd never get him to say that. And to be fair to Lloris, he would front up after games and talk to the media that way. But yeah, there's other players, I think more experienced players, the older heads at Spurs, who you would only hear from if they'd done well or won a game. And I never really liked that. I'd like to kind of see that connection with the fans after. And that is, to be fair to Romero, something he does. Good performance from him. It's going to happen like this. The way he plays, he's going to have these games where he's kind of like got energy, belief, leadership, skill, strength, aggression. He'll channel it all in the right way. And there'll be other games when he'll do it and it's a complete and utter disaster. And, we saw it against Chelsea. It's quite key that it's Chelsea up next because obviously the last time he played them, everything that is good about him, he took over the limit and he went far too far and made a complete and utter mess of it. But yeah, I was really pleased with Romero and with it. He's just turned 26, isn't he? It was his birthday on Saturday. So he's a little bit older, a little bit more mature by a couple of days. And I felt he was a driving force. And yeah, I asked Ange about him afterwards and I said, look, one of the positives was Romero. He was good, wasn't he? And he went, he was outstanding. And he said, I want to get his quote exactly right. He said, where have I got it here? He said, he's a World Cup winner, and I've just got to get some of what's in him into some of the others. And that's quite rare for Postecoglou to really kind of go at his other players. And it's true, though. There are too many heads down in that game. And Romero is one of the few that was not having it, like I say. So, I thought he was excellent. I still think there's improving he can do as a defender, as an organizer in the back line. But I do, and at 26 years old, you're nowhere near your peak as a centre back. But I think as an overall team leader, he's taken real giant strides this season.
Yep. There was someone else at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium yesterday. I actually thought this was what you were going to mention when you were on about Mikey Moore.
I knew you did. I could see your face. I knew you
yeah,
thought
yeah. Santiago Jimenez, the final striker who's been linked with a move to Spurs. He was at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium for the game. If you go on these Instagram stories, number of photos up there from the game yesterday, including a video of Son's penalty. It's actually not sat that far behind you. It's actually in the seats.
Thanks for
just
pointing
above,
that out. Yeah,
just above the press box. But he's also been linked with Arsenal.
Yeah,
as well. And there was another Feyenoord player there. I don't know the name. It's the right back, I think. But he was also at the Liverpool game against West Ham 24 hours earlier. Right. But I think it looks like Arne Slot had given the team, a bit of time off because they played on Thursday.
So the weekend off kind of thing.
Yeah, so Jimenez obviously taking the Eurostar from Rotterdam.
Look at you knowing his travel arrangements.
It was on his Instagram stories. Picture of him sat on the train.
Fair enough. Enough. I was going to say it could have been a cheap Ryanair flight over to Stansted Airport, but if you know, you know.
What he'd have done yesterday up front. Someone else, someone who knows where the goal is.
Yeah, well, he certainly does. He's a player that, like you say, Spurs do like. It's one of those we can't read too much into it as much as we'd like to, because there are so many players that go in those boxes behind us, because there's a few of those at agency boxes. I think Base have got a box there that they have quite a few players come and watch games at. I mean, Eze recently, I think, had a box there, or was used their box too with his family from Palace. Tom Holland's Spider-Man was there as well yesterday. I think he might have been in either James Madison's box or one next to it or something. I don't think he's signing for Spurs, but he is a Spurs fan. But there's interesting. I don't think it's a bad thing for Spurs to have a player like that if you've got an interest in him, to have come and seen the amazing stadium, to have seen a game like that and seen that, set pieces aside, Spurs weren't too shabby. They were okay for long periods of that game, and seeing where maybe you could fit into that. We'll see what happens with him. I mean, obviously Spurs have been burnt before in buying a striker from the Dutch league. It hasn't always worked for them, especially one that's scored a lot of goals. But I'm intrigued to see what they do with that number 9 role and who comes in. And he's had a really good couple of seasons, Jimenez, 23-year-old Mexican, and got a lot about him. But it is knowing whether he can fit into the Premier League and also mainly Postecoglou system.
Yeah. So Chelsea next up on Thursday evening. Confident?
Yeah. Oh, I'm really cold about Stamford Bridge. It always goes so well. Do you know what? I'm going to absolutely jinx it now, and I kind of feel like there has to be a bit of a reaction, and I think you have to go there and show a lot of the good things that they managed to do in the North London derby, and eradicate a lot of the bad things. And also, Chelsea is such an up and down side at the moment. You don't know kind of what version of them you're going to get in any moment of the game. Unless I'm remembering it completely wrongly, before Romero went a bit mad, Spurs played pretty well against Chelsea in the home game. They really kind of looked like they were going to sweep past them. So, if he gets the team right and the players, I think a lot will come down to, obviously set pieces will be a part of it, but I do think going forward, a lot of that needs to change. I personally would bring in Richarlison. If he's fit enough now, got half an hour under his belt, I would get him straight in there for that game. And maybe make a couple of other changes as well. But they've got a chance. I'll put it that way. It's one of those games going into it that if they play how they can play and dominate the game with the ball that they can do, I think they'll get a lot of joy against Chelsea, who are very kind of porous as well in their defending and how many chances they will concede to teams. But it's just about stopping some of their key players as well.
Yeah, you just don't know what Chelsea team you're coming up
No.
against. It's got a really good point at Villa. Almost won it as well because there was that disallowed goal for Disassi in stoppage time, and they've done all right at Stamford Bridge this season.
Yeah.
Draws against City, Arsenal, and Liverpool. I think it's probably only Villa of maybe the top 6 or 7 teams who've won there. So going to be a really tough one. And I think we've said it before, Spurs have gone to Stamford Bridge a number of times in the past where you probably think they're the better team.
Yeah.
And you think they're going to finally end the hoodoo there, and it just never quite happens. But fingers crossed it'll be on Thursday, because they certainly need it if they want to be playing in the Champions League next season.
I know.
Right.
Those 2 Dele Alli goals, honestly, they feel like a long time ago.
Yeah, they do. Right, we'll leave that there for today's latest episode of Golden Guest Talk Tottenham. Thank you as ever for listening in, and just keep with us at football.london for all your latest Tottenham news. To get the best discount off your NordVPN plan, go to nordvpn.com/goldguest. There's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee, and you'll help support our podcast. The link is in the episode description box.